When I was working my way up, I always wished that I had the chance to be able to have a little chat with the people that I looked up to, the ones that I saw on stage, and really wished that I could be like. Well, my name is Chris Baran, and I have been around probably about 40 plus years now, a couple of hair awards behind me. And I figured I've got the opportunity that I can bring to you the hair heroes that we look up to and admire, and let you have and listen in while we have a conversation and find out their mistakes, find out what they did right and wrong. Welcome to Chris Baran's Headcases. I'm thrilled about this week's episode. Just ask me why. It's because I've got on a young gentleman by the name of Cole Thompson. Now, he was actually the youngest creative director with Sassoons UK. Actually worked with them for 12 years. And here's what I found really interesting is that in one of the Vidal Sassoon commercials that he was in, he was described as a salon genius. And that's pretty good in my eyes. And he actually came to America, started Elevation H, was a company that is about the art, technique, and the business of hair. So I can't wait to get into this with my good buddy, Cole Thompson. So let's get into this week's Headcase. First of all, Cole, it is just such a distinct honor in here because, I have to tell the public the little story is I've always been a fan. I've seen you, I've seen your work, I've seen what you do. I know you and trust you as the disciplined hair cutter from Sassoons, and as we talked about in the opening, who was the youngest creative director. But I just want to say that it's such a pleasure to have you on board here. But I want to just dig in a little bit of history, just so that people know a little bit about where your history is from. But I have this philosophy that I think that there's two types of people that get into our business, and they're the ones that they did hair right from day one. The kids next door, the dogs, if they were playing with dolls, the dolls' haircuts a doll's hair was cut, etc. And there's those kind of people. They knew it, and I think when you ask people in the audience, some of the people raise their hand. But then there's the people like me who just fell into it. My mom was a hairdresser, and I kind of fell into it. Where do you fit in there? How did you get into business? Which area were you a part of? Did you want to do it from square one? What's your story?
Great question. I never wanted to be a hairstylist. Like, it was never in the cards for me. It wasn't something I was interested in. I'd never cut anybody's hair or anything like that. One of my aunties was kind of like a hairstylist, but not really. She just did like little old ladies on a Tuesday, like a roller set and stuff. So it was just something I absolutely fell into. It was just by chance, and almost instantly I fell in love with it, and I had no idea what an industry it was and how amazing it was.
So that's, I firstly agree wholeheartedly, because that's where I came from. The only time my mom had a beauty salon, and the new fashion beauty shoppy, 2 P's, 2 E's at the end, very colonial, I might add, pink and blue frock wallpaper. And the only time that I ever went in was to ask my mom for some money just to go for chips and gravy at the local cafe. But I had that same kind of thing. But it's an interesting, that's how some of us who never wanted to start up, never really wanted to get there, ended up here and ended up really dipping our feet into that passion pool of hairdresser. And there's the story. How did you get from just getting in? Your auntie gave you that bit of thing. You went to school or whatever, because the UK is very different than the US, wasn't it? What was it like when you went? Where did you go to a school? Did you do an apprenticeship? What was it?
Yeah, the UK is very, very different. It's more apprenticeship based. There's more like, it's government funded. So salons will get paid to take on between 16 and 18-year-olds and train them in any sort of trade. So that could be hairdressing, being a bricklayer, a plumber, or anything like that. So there's a big government initiative for young people to get into work, which is great. So when I left high school at 16, and again, I always wanted to be a soccer player. That was my thing. But nobody told me if you wanted to be a professional athlete at something, you actually need to be pretty good. I just presumed I'm going to be a soccer player, and it didn't really work out and materialize for me. And then when I knew that wasn't really in the cards, I wanted to go to college and maybe work with a sports team or something. And I wasn't really good at sitting in a classroom and listening. And typically now that's what I do for a living. I teach and I'm in classrooms all the time, which is kind of weird. And I quit this course that I'd signed up for, and I didn't tell my parents that I'd quit. And I remember about a week later of doing absolutely nothing, my mum came home from work and again, this is definitely the polite PG version here. She said, "Why aren't you at college?" And I said, "Oh, well, I didn't really like it. I quit." And she, and again, this is the polite version. She said, "Excuse me, you did what?" And I said, "Oh, it was boring. I didn't want to do it." And she's like, "Okay, you have 1 week to either find a job," because I came from a working class background, and my parents, even to this day, they're both 150 years old and they still like to work, right? So I either need to work to be able to provide money and help with groceries for my brothers and our family, or my parents will only support me if I'm trying to get a better life for myself by being educated. And I was doing none of these things. So she threw the local newspaper at me, because this is pre-internet, if anyone can remember that.
Right.
Pre-internet. So the only way to find a job really was going door to door or in the local newspaper. So she threw the newspaper at me and said, "Find a job." I opened up the newspaper and I just in a panic, called the first number on the page. I didn't really look what it was, and it happened to be a hair salon. And again, the town I grew up in, this is 21 years ago, not many guys became hairstylists. And a guy answered the phone and he was like, "You're a guy and you want to be a hairstylist?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He said, "What soccer team or football team do you support?" And I said, "Manchester United." And he said, "You start tomorrow." And that was it. So random. That number on the page, it could have been for like a plumber. It could have been anything, and I'd have been the best dressed plumber you've ever seen. But
Yeah.
that's how it happened.
Yeah, what you hit something right on the head there, Cole. Is that, see, for me, I didn't know what I want to do. My mom said you need to do something, and I said I either wanted to be a mechanic or I wanted to be a mechanic because I loved cars, but I knew I couldn't get fired. So I said, "Mom, okay, good, I'll do hairdressing." And then she said, because she needed somebody. Obviously, we lived in a really small town. And she said, I said, "Well, I want to take the summer off because I just got finished with school." Then she said, no. She says, that was June 28th. July 1st, I was at the beauty school taking my training. But you said something really, really interesting there. You said, if you would have been a plumber, you'd have been the best damn plumber that there was. Because I think that's something that's inherent in people, is that this drive. If you had to put that down, and and I know the word is passion or whatever, but what is it that drove you? What is it that drives you?
Great question. And I mean, even before I had a kid and stuff like now, like my family drives me. But even from when I was very, very young, whatever it is that I was going to do, I always wanted to make sure that whenever people met me or was around me, they left thinking that guy works really hard, like that guy showed up today, whatever it is. So going back to your original question about apprenticeships, in the UK, you start an apprenticeship. So you get trained 1 day a week, and the rest of the week you work in the salon, you sweep floors, you shampoo people's hair, you just kind of do, make cups of tea.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure if I'm sweeping these floors, I'm going to sweep the floor better than anyone who's ever done it. I'm going to get the first and the last. And again, I wasn't really interested in being a hairstylist, but I wanted the people that were around me to think this guy works really, really hard. And my parents installed that in me, even from a really, really young age. So I guess it's kind of built in there a little bit. And I guess it goes into passion, but it's more of a work ethic that anybody that I spend time with, I would like them to either remember me or have a really positive impression after the fact.
Yeah. I think that's critical too. Because people's impression of you are so important. How did you? Now, I'm curious. I'm taking that wild assumption here that the place you went to work for first, was that Sassoons or was that someplace different? And if so, what prompted? Where did that transition happen from there to Sassoons?
So it it wasn't Sassoons. It was basically like one of the nicest salons in the little town that I grew up in. And it's funny because I've got an identical twin brother, and he ended up working there as well. Um, and we still work together to this day. We have a business together. He's still in the UK. But once I knew I was kind of serious about it, I'd maybe got a year into it, and I remember around the holidays, my mum and my parents would take us into Manchester, which was the closest big city to us. And we'd always get off the train or close to the parking lot, and we'd always walk past this it was probably about 10 stories, but on 2 stories, completely glass on the corner, we'd walk past this hair salon. And I'd always remember, even as a kid, walking past that and thinking that, I don't even know what that place is, but it looks cool. And you had
Yeah,
big images in the window, and there was always like everyone was like dressed amazing in there, and it just looked cool. So I remember walking past there one Christmas time when I was still working in the town I grew up in, and I thought, oh my god, like that's a hair salon. Maybe I could go and work there. That looks incredible. So I applied, and maybe 8 9 months later, I ended up getting a letter back and saying you can interview, and you have to go to London for the interview. And I don't think I'd ever been to London at that point, so that was really scary. And I was maybe 17, 18, maybe, I don't know, something like that. And I went for the interview, and maybe 4 or 5 months after that, I ended up getting the job. So it just captured my eye, and there's something
yeah,
about it that was so magnetic.
yeah. It was, and then so now the journey. So just so that we're clear, I went from Manchester. 7 months later, you're going to London, scared. Walk into this salon, and I'm assuming this was Sassoons that you applied for. You go in, you get hired. Now there's this time. What was it like when you first got there? Number one, and then what? You were the youngest creative director for Sassoons, so I'm assuming that somehow, but the time that you walked in that front door, it wasn't a very short distance to all of a sudden becoming a creative director. Tell us about that? What was that like? What spurred it? I can't even imagine, because I'll tell you, I'm a Sassoon junkie. I never worked for them, but that was all my classes. That's where my background is. That's where I credit my skills from. But that must have taken a great set of cojones, I always say, to go in there and then put yourself out there, because you know that you are being judged when you're going in to apply, and then you've got to get those. Now you're working from there to the creative director. I'm curious.
It was definitely a hell of a journey, but I remember like my mum she's amazing, but she is notoriously negative, right?
Ah,
So I remember going for the interview in London, and again, I was a kid really at the time. She's like, "You don't want to do that. You work 2 minutes from where we live. Like, you don't want to be going into the city." So she kind of like kept talking me out of it. But there was something in me, and I had a couple of really great supportive friends who were like, "Just go and see, just go and try it." And then when I got the job in Manchester, I remember on my first couple of days, because you go directly into a training program that they call Vardering, which is
yeah.
you train 5 days a week, and you're almost instantly expected to get 3 models a day. Just find people, and so you'd have to go out in the city and convince people to let you cut the hair. And I remember on my first day watching some videos, the ABCs, and it was so different from the training that I'd originally got. It was much more structured. And I remember going home that night and just saying to my mum, like, I don't think I can do this. Like, there's no way I can ever cut hair like that. And she's like, well, don't go back. You can just get your old job back. And then I remember going to my friends that night, and he's like, no, like, just stick it out. Like, just give it a week. Give it a week and see. And then by the end of the week, people had warmed up to me, and they was teaching me the methods and stuff. And even though it was still scary, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can do this. And then from there, again, I just showed up every single day, and I knew if I'm going to do this, I have to work really, really hard. I have to find the models I want to produce, and I'd get at the at the second that the shop opened, and I'd stay later than I needed to. So they kind of saw that work ethic, and very, very quickly. They would start to do they do like collections or events at like the Weller studio or
Yeah.
wherever, and they'd always bring assistants with them. So they just asked me like, "Hey Cole, do you want to come in on Sunday on your day off and help me out on this photo shoot or whatever?" And I'm like, "Yep, I'll be there." So I just kept showing up. I'm almost that annoying guy. I'd ask questions all the time and just wanted to. I'm sure I was very annoying. I'd want to be there. And then what ended up happening is because I kept going to all of these things, people kept seeing me and they just presumed I was more experienced than I actually was. And then maybe a year and a half after being there, um, I kept hearing that they were opening up a new salon in Liverpool, and and nobody wanted to take the creative director's job in Liverpool. I don't know why. I have no idea. And my boss, his name was Bruce Macefield. He was a UK creative director at the time, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I think you're great. You got a really great work ethic." He's like, "How would you like to go and be the creative director in Liverpool?" And obviously, nobody else wanted to do it. I don't know Liverpool's a great city. I don't know whether it was timing or fate or whatever. And I was like, "Oh my god, really?" And he's like, "I know it's quick, but I know you can do it, and you want to do it." I'm like, "Absolutely." So it was definitely the right place at the right time. So I just moved over there, and you become an assistant creative director for a little while and kind of cut your teeth a little bit. But there wasn't a manager at that time. I was there on my own with a brand new salon in a brand new team. So I had to do all of the roles, which was
Wow.
terrifying. I had no idea what I was doing, but it definitely made me kind of step up a little bit. Lots of mistakes, but I just went for it.
Yeah. But you know what? You just said something really interesting. I was terrified, but the interesting thing is you were terrified, but not frozen by it. And I think that's, if there's anything that I think nowadays that I see is that there's so much judgment that's going on out in our industry that, and I don't know what it is. I don't know quite how to put it. If it's just that people are just too afraid to do anything new and they just become paralyzed with this fear that they can't do anything. So they stagnate and sit where they are, you know?
It's true. It's
Do
absolutely
you
true.
do you feel like, is there a difference between, and I don't want to go into the then versus now and the good old days and all that, but do you find now, is there something in there when you go out and you teach all the time? What is it that you notice that people that are either afraid of or holds people back now when you see them in your classes?
Really good question, actually. And one thing that just came to mind, I work with, I do a lot of work with Hattori Hanzo Shears, and the guy that runs the education department over there is called Andrew. Amazing guy. He is the most energy all the time. And a lot of the time when I'm on the phone to him or we have conference calls, he'll start it like this. And this is really powerful. He's like, "Okay, guys, who's ready to fail today?" That's kind of how he
Wow.
starts it. And when he first said, I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, if you don't do anything, you can't fail. But the only way you can fail is if you actually do something. And failure is good because that's the only way you can improve and we can learn and we
Wow.
can get better." And he said, most of the time, you're not going to fail, but then at least you did something. And I just got chills then even saying it because it's so powerful like that and not being afraid to fail. And there's definitely areas in my life more recently where I've realized like I'm letting myself down in certain areas, right? I can be better in certain areas, and it's people that help you to see that. For example, with social media or having maybe more of an online presence
Yeah.
and insecurities. I don't really like walking around talking on a camera and things like that. But you just have to do it, and there is no excuse in terms of like there's no excuse, but you're making them, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. I make things like that all the time. So I think you've just got to do it. And in terms of your question, in terms of classes, people all the time like, "Oh, I'd like to be a platform artist," or "I'd like to teach," or you just got to go for it. ask questions, utilize your social media, reach out to companies, just go for it. Because I think we live in such an amazing time right now that things are accessible. Connection is like, we're doing this now. All of my family lives in the UK. I speak to them every single day. I don't feel a disconnect. So I think we're in
Right.
such an amazing time where you can share, you can connect, you can communicate, where it was much, much harder pre-internet. Like for people to know who you are, like you needed to work for a huge company or whatever. And I think there's some amazingly driven people out there. I would just kind of use your resources. So I hope that answered your question, but I really
Yeah,
my
no, it does. Because I think that I guess what I'm really trying to not get towards whatever, but it's just that I just find that it's such an interesting time in the classes we teach versus the real life. Is everybody in real life comes in with the same parameters of judgment and fear that they have all the time. I just feel that so many people are always they're so used to being judged, and unfortunately, we have this. We just know in society, if you just make a lot of mistakes, you're seen as lower, ranked lower. If you do a lot of things well, you're ranked higher, and it really is craziness because the only way that we learn is by failing, is by making mistakes. And it's interesting. I often at the start of a class, I'll just say to everybody, okay, give everybody pair up, and you and I would pair up, and then we'd say, okay, get out a piece of paper. And then I say, okay, here's what I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to draw each other's face, hair, glasses, if they wear them, etc. You got 30 seconds. You have to be done at the end. And the reality is the groans that you hear in the audience, just because of people always come up and you'll see them drawing real quickly, and then they'll turn the picture to the other person, and the first thing they usually say is, "I'm sorry." And what I say to them is, it's interesting, isn't it, that why was it that you were so afraid? Why was it when I said draw somebody else's face? Well, we're not good at it. We haven't done it before. All of those things, but they're so worried about being judged, that they turn around and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't do a good job. Here it is." And that's the same way as when we go into a class, isn't it? You're teaching something that you're really good at, and they might be doing it for the first time, and yet they're so worried about the perfection that it takes that they hold themselves back. They're so afraid of just trying something new, and they're trying to make it exactly the same way as you made it look. And it's just ridiculous because it can't happen. It's not going to be that way. When you see a child and they hold up a picture, they hold up this picture and show it to you, and you say, "Oh, that's amazing." And we celebrate it.
Yeah.
And then we say, "What is it?" Right? We don't do that in real life, somehow. And I think that when people came into the classes, if they could just bring more of that childlike persona, just that willingness to just do whatever because it's that, I don't care if I make a mistake, it's obviously, if you're doing it on a live person, it can bring a whole new fear level into it. But the reality is that's the only way we learn. The only way we learn.
It's so true. And for example, when teaching, everything that I'll present or talk about in a class is things that I've learned from other people. So I'm just basically sharing things that I've picked up along the way. Like, I didn't invent any of this stuff. Maybe I have analogies or ways to break it down that might connect or not with different people to simplify. But in general, all I've done and what all of us do is we see something or hear something, we try it, and it works, and we keep on using it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then hopefully in a class, we'll always encourage us to be open to, like, whatever you see, just try it. And if it works, keep using it, and then it's a benefit to you. And if not, then don't. And I think if anybody out there is wanting to get into education or presenting or anything like that, and if they're a behind the chair hairstylist, they present every single day on every single client. They're doing it already, right? In front of the biggest critics, people who are paying them to make them look good. So doing it in front of hairstylists is much, much easier. Just sharing what you know.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Is that there's such a shift out there. And I think that there's so many people that are still out there working behind the chair that have that same kind of gift that you have, that could get out there and help and really help to change some other people's lives. I think that's the biggest thing that I think spurs educators on is when you help somebody and you see them change. I'll bet you, and I don't know if this is a Canadian expression or whatever it is, but I always say, I bet you $1 to a donut. I don't know of anybody else that uses that expression but me, and I don't even know what it means, but I'll bet that there's people out there that really would love to go out and help to change somebody's life. And I'll bet you, like you, I'll bet, and I'm going to say something that I know you're going to agree to right away, because I'll bet there is people that have come up to you and they've said, Cole, I watched you do X, Y, Z, and you changed my life when you did that. And you might not have even remembered that person being in the class. True or false?
Yeah, it's happened. Absolutely. Yeah, it does happen quite regularly. What I suppose that's bragging a little bit, but it does happen. But what happens a lot as well is, because I do a lot of work in beauty schools across the US, and what happens a lot is I didn't know whether this was the right job for me or career, but your presentation, either speaking about your career or the way that you broke it down, whatever it is, I think that this is going to be a really good fit for me. I feel like passionate now, and honestly, like that is the biggest, most amazing compliment that I could ever have. Because all I'm doing, I've been very, very lucky to be put into a situation where I can educate other people. In the education area was definitely not something I even wanted to do, but it's a privilege, and it's such a big responsibility to talk to like the future of our industry, and I definitely don't take it lightly, and I absolutely love it, because they're the people who are going to keep it going long after us, and they're going to be better than us, because we've taken everything that we've learned up to now, and then we're going to hopefully give it to them, and then they're going to continue, and I think it hopefully can just keep on getting better and better and better.
Yeah, we always stand on the shoulders of the people that taught us. So that leads us to an interesting point here, because we did the thing with Sassoons. Eventually, I'm hoping I can go back, because I still have one more question about that I want to talk about later. But you made a shift in your life, in your career. You started a company. You started Elevation H. And so tell us a little bit about what Elevation H exactly, for the people who may not know it. What exactly is that?
So I'll tell you about who we are and what we do, and then I can definitely touch on that, how it came to be, the thought process. But we are an education company. We're based out of Beverly Hills, California, but we work globally. What we specifically do is like training and apprenticeship programs and support systems for schools and salons. So we focus specifically on salon readiness. So if you're a school, we're an add-on service to Pivot Point or Milady. We have a full online university. We focus on decision-making, confidence, speed, things that are specific to behind the chair. But we're purely technical. We don't do like business building things. We're just, how do we bridge that gap between school and salons? So the students focus specifically on salon readiness, and then we also have a full teacher training university. So when we give our program to schools, we train the trainer on how to present and how to do board lectures and demonstrations and all that. So that's a huge part of our business, is teaching people to become educators or presenters. So that's kind of what our school program does. And then the students have lifetime access. So even long after they've graduated, because it's a scary time when they first get a job, we can help with placement. We can help with making sure that they're confident behind the chair. We can communicate with them if they've ever got any questions. And then for the salons, we do like an apprenticeship type program. So the salon lets us know how long they want it to be, if they want to do 1 day a week training, 1 day a month, whatever. And we specifically and personally design it for that business. And again, we make sure that the students graduate salon ready, and we just make sure that we fill in that gap. Because what we found a lot of the time, if you're a salon owner, you're the busiest person in the shop, you're responsible for everything, right? Make sure everyone's busy. You're making sure the lights are on. You're also responsible for training the team. We just basically train people's teams for them, and they can be involved or not. It's up to them. So that's what we do. And then we have like a subscription based learning for individuals and like mentorships. So
That's awesome.
that's
First of all, I'm going to do this, and I'm taking my hat off to you. And the reason I do that is that I really think that we're at a place in our world right now where we've really got to make sure that our industry is seen on a higher light. And the school systems that we have are great. Not taking anything away from them, but we have to. There's things that we can do to add on to make them salon ready when they leave, because that's probably if we hear the biggest complaint is that when we get out, we've got to retrain. So being involved in the training systems in the UK and being a part of the training systems that are involved in America and the rest of the world. But I think we probably define that in North America, the training systems are a little bit different than the rest of the world because of the school systems. Great schools. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything bad about them. As a matter of fact, there are some phenomenal schools that there are out there. If you say the biggest difference between schooling in the UK and here, what would you say the biggest difference is? And then after that, the biggest the similarities that there still is between the two of them.
I think that the difference really is time. So every state has you're on a ticking clock, right? To when you're done. So some people will excel in that time frame, and some people just might need a little bit more support and a little bit more time. We're in the UK, you're done when you're done. So it's on a very individualized basis, and you have like a loose, okay, it's going to be 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's based upon application, confidence, and ability. So once you can do a certain haircut really, really well, boom, done. Now you can start to do that. And now you can apply this color. You can do it to a really high standard. You can do that. So it doesn't really hold people back as much, but it also gives them the time if they need a little bit more support. So that's kind of a gap that we saw, is like what happens if, again, there's some phenomenal schools, some absolutely incredible schools, but if the student finishes the 1,600 hours, 1,000 hours, and they just maybe need a little bit more work on a specific haircut, whatever, it's kind of is what it is. So that's where we fit in, and either they'll bring our program in towards the back end of the curriculum, or they'll even give it as a graduation gift to be like, okay, I know that you've finished here now. I don't want you keep calling me every week when you get a client with a problem, right? You can't really do that. I'm sure some students do call their instructors a couple of months later like, oh my God, this client's asking for this. What the heck do I do? But it's not really realistic long term. So they kind of give our program, a lot of schools will do it as a graduation type thing. Like if you run into issues, this company, you call them, you can reach out to them, they can walk you through your issues, you can share your work with them. So we kind of hold their hand a little bit. So it's a huge enrollment talking point for us with schools. It's like, hey, when you finish, if you need more support, we work with this specific company that will kind of send you over to.
Yeah.
And what we found over the years is it does help with placement. It does help with staying in the industry because there's a resource. They don't feel so like alone, which is awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think that you hit on a really interesting part there, which is community. I think that, is we always say that there's three areas that accountability is really keen on, and that's the first one is self, the next one is to your teachers, and the third one is community. And reliably, the community is the highest level of accountability that people will work towards. So what I love what you're saying is if you can have networks of people that work with you, somebody you can call, someplace you can go, someplace you can fall back on, a video you can watch or whatever, people within there that are like-minded, even if it's another student that knows something, I think community is such a huge, huge, huge part of this. So it is, I always think of it like this. I don't know, I always kind of dream about, God, wouldn't it be nice to have a magic wand? And if you could just shake this magic wand and wave it and change something about our industry or wish for something that our industry would have or do, what would that be? If you could wave that magic wand, Cole, what would you want to change? What would you wish for?
Oh my goodness, that is a fantastic question. Um, I would wish, because I think there's so many just wonderful areas to our industry. You know, whether it's now there's a big focus on like independence, where that's definitely like a new wave of, you don't have to go down the traditional route. You can have your own schedule, create your own um, things like that. I think that that's amazing. I do love the traditional like commission based salons and support and training. I think overall, I would just wish that everybody got the help and support that they might
Yeah.
need, and I would like to see more people stay in the industry long term, because I find I'll speak to a lot of students once they've graduated from some of the schools we work with, and they might not be a hairstylist anymore. And usually they might have got into a job that just wasn't really the best fit for them. Maybe they would like to be an extension specialist or a color specialist, but they got a job in, you know, a barber shop that doesn't even offer color extensions. So they kind of give up on their goal and dream. So I
Yeah.
think it would be great to let everybody know, like, the within this industry, there's so many areas that will be a great fit for you, and know if you end up in a job that you don't love or you don't see a future in, a slight pivot, whether that's working for a product company, or you could even be a sales rep for a company, or you could work part time, whatever it is. I think that to let people know that there's other areas within the industry that can support you and help you achieve your dreams, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you've made. I'll tell you what mine was, and I think you're helping me shift my magic wand a little bit here, because mine was always, if I could just take away, you know, in the classes or whatever, if I could make this magic wand and just take away the fear that everybody had of trying something new. But you know, I think I want to change mine to the the fact that there is so much, there's such amazing opportunity in our business where you literally can make any kind of money that you want. You know, it's interesting, and I may have said this in other podcasts we've had, but I can remember saying this distinctly to somebody that came up to me when their um, children were going to go into hairdressing, and they said to me, what can they expect to make? In other words, earn. How much money can they expect to earn? And I put it to them this way. I said, exactly what they deserve. You know, because I see so many
Yes.
people that, you know, I know people in our industry that don't apply themselves and have a hard enough time making rent. And I know people that are in our industry that are making six figures and more, and they might have been a high school graduate, just but because they got into what you said, you put it right, you hit the nail right on the head. They didn't get into the right salon. If
Yeah.
you can get into the right salon that has an education manager or has an education program, has an owner that has is a visionary and is more worried about growing the people within than their name on the shingle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That I think that's what's happening is our businesses need to become more visionaries and more business people. They need to be more entrepreneurs than just, you know, my name is on the front door, therefore people need to come and see me because, you know, it's my name on the front door and I'm the best one and I don't want anybody to surpass me. I think our jobs need to be is to train everybody else so that they do surpass us, so that they're better
Yeah.
than you are.
Definitely, and I think the wonderful thing about our industry, in terms of, you know, dollar amount, it could potentially be endless. You know, if you get involved with products, or, you know, talking volume or whatever it is. But also the other side of that, I think what's so wonderful about what we do is it's considerate to whatever your life is. So if you would like to have a family, if you would like to work part time and spend time at home with the family or whatever it is, there's a way in this industry that can support that. It's such a flexible, and it's, yeah, of course, dollar amounts is a really important thing, but I think in terms of life
Yeah.
balance and happiness, that it's such an open industry like that of whatever it is. I know a lot of people that work part-time, they make great money, they spend time with the family, they're at every birthday party, and they're happy. And I think there's an area in this industry that can support that, unlike almost any other industry.
Yeah. And well, you can't, that's really hard to do in most any other profession. It's if I want to work 2 to 3 days a week, but and I still in that time frame can book myself so that I'm earning a very good living and still have time with my family and still work the amount of hours that I want to do. That's where this industry comes from or is in. And I think that, would you agree, Ely, from me looking on the outside in with my magic crystal, if I think that that's the thing that's hurting a lot of commission-based businesses, that they're not shifting with the times and they're not shifting and allowing people that, you've got to work 5 days a week. You've got to be here for 8 hours. You've got to start at 9. You've got to end at 6. I think that if our industry as commission-based businesses or salary-based businesses, whatever, they're going to have to shift. They've got to shift and do something different now to accommodate, because our world has shifted in the last 2 years. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but we know there's lots of people out there that say, look, I want more life balance. I want to be with my family more. I want to do X, Y, Z and only do that, but still earn a living. So if the more that we can shift our businesses to accommodate that when life changes, I think the better. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I think, because I get asked this question all the time, because we work with businesses all over the world, and no matter what country, no matter what background, same conversation, that they're struggling with dealing with maybe like younger people or like a newer generation. And I think it's wonderful, actually. I think we have to embrace, because you can't change things. You can't change the world by complaining about things, but we can adapt and we can use it to our benefit. So I think that the key thing that I've found with dealing with a slightly newer generation, and I love this, is very singular, meaning, okay, well, you're right, I would like a good work-life balance. I'd like to make this amount. I would like to do this or whatever it is. And I think we should think like that. Absolutely, we should. And I think that you can use that to create very loyal people. So we speak to a lot of our businesses about have regular check-ins and have like an interview type thing at the beginning and find out, what is your ideal salary? How much would you like to make working here? Yeah. What would your ideal work week be? And it might be like, okay, well, I go to watch football every Saturday, so I don't want to work Saturdays, or I need to have Tuesday evenings off because my kid, whatever. Find out what's an ideal salary, what's an ideal work week, strengths, weaknesses. But I'd say, are you okay to share your strengths with us? And are you open to sharing your weaknesses? And are you open to letting us help you improve those weaknesses? And then also from there is, what are your goals? Like what would you like to achieve? And then go away and figure out, okay, well, to get that salary, you're going to need to do 10 clients a day, and you only want to work 4 days a week. So maybe you need to do 12 clients a day. So, and then you just present them with, this is your plan. Yep. This is how you're going to achieve all of this. This is how you're going to get that work week. Because having that, okay, you have to work 5 days a week. My first boss on my first day said to me, he said, I've never forgotten this. This is 21 years ago. And he said, Cole, I hope you know that you've just signed up for a job in an industry that you're never going to have a Saturday off ever again. And it just was, I was like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to work Saturdays, but I've not worked a Saturday for 12 years now. So again, you can have whatever it is that you want, but there has to be a plan, and there has to be a work ethic and clarity. And I think that business owners run into an issue where the business owner's thinking this, and the person who works with them is thinking the other, and like, oh, well, they just want to take all the money they're making, and they don't really want to work. But it's like, let's just be cards on the table. What do you need? What do you want? This is how we're going to do it.
I love it.
People become loyal like that. Yeah,
I love it. I want to kind of shift a little gears here to that is in your career. First of all, I want to start with this one. I remember being at you and I, we first really connected, and I still hold this moment very dear, and I know you're know the moment I'm talking about. Was you and I were doing a panel for Beauty Changes Lives, and I remember we were talking about the stuff that came up in our lives, the missteps that happened in our lives. And I remember you talking about doing a show in South Korea, and they couldn't speak English. You obviously you couldn't speak Korean, but you were doing a model. Do you remember the incident?
Yeah, yeah, very well.
Tell everybody about that, because I found it absolutely, number one, hilarious, but also something that we can all relate to.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of a crazy story, really. But had the privilege for maybe about 2 or 3 years. When I was working at Sassoon, we were working very closely with an amazing salon group out there called Juno Hair, Juno Hair.
Yeah.
Huge. We would go out and train the trainers. We'd work with the students. We would do big seminars for them. And I remember the first time going out there. And again, they make such a big deal of it. You know, they picked us up from the airport and they've got like posters and like, "Hi, Mr. Cole." And like, it was incredible, absolutely incredible, just amazing people. And we landed and we went straight from the airport after, flying all these hours to like a model call. And all of the models that they'd chosen came in and they all had hair down to the like waist. One length, perfectly straight, no color, no nothing, just like black, perfect, gorgeous hair. And the interpreter's like talking like, "Okay, what do you want for your hair?" And they're like, "Oh, like just a trim. Like I just kind of want to keep it like this." And we're like, "Okay, but we want to, soon we want to do like we want to cut people's hair right now. They've flown us over here. We're not going to do trims in front of 500 people." And this went on for maybe half an hour, and we were like, "Well, we don't have any models. What are we going to do?" And we said to the interpreter, like, "You need to find us people that are relatively open because people are paying a lot of money for this show. We can't just show them trims." So then suddenly, after this conversation, the next girl is open. She'll do anything. Yeah, and I'm talking to her, and she's talking to him. She wants whatever you want. Do whatever you want. I'm like, okay, this is great. So then every girl from there, suddenly, after we kind of like reprimanded this guy a little bit, every girl was open. She'll do whatever color you want, whatever haircut. And we're like, okay, great. Our looks changed. So the day after we're doing the show, and again I'm up there. And there's like a camera, and it's on a big screen, so like the whole audience can see like looking right at my hands. And I remember I took a section, I combed it down, and I just cut like this short little line on this girl, and I just never forget. I just saw a tear drop. And on the big screen, and the whole audience was like, and then the interpreter started saying something in Korean, like really energetic, and then they all just started clapping and like, "Whoa, oh my God," like, and I'm like, and I just kept on going. And when I got off the stage afterwards, I said, "What the hell was that?" And he said, "Oh yeah, she wasn't that open, but I knew you needed to cut some hair." I said, "Well, what did you say to the audience?" And he said, "She's so privileged to have somebody from Sassoon cut her hair. These are tears of joy." And the funny thing was, like, she ended up loving it. And all of the other girls were like, "Oh my God." And they just loved it. And we did like a big photo shoot and made a big thing about it. And it kind of became, it was ended up being really successful. But that moment and I was quite young at the time. When I saw her cry, I'm like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, this is an absolute nightmare." We just rolled with it. You just had to keep on going. But this interpreter, I mean, this guy, geez, he master manipulator.
Yeah. I was, I'm sure that we've all had those, what I call butt pucker moments when that happens. And it sparked in my brain. I remember doing this was just a hands-on class I was doing, but I remember and I was doing this broomstick shape, everything combed down, very blunt, very broomsticky on the ends. And then I just, and at the very end, just on some of the top layers, I was just layering the top. And so I'm talking to the audience like this, and I just noticed, sometimes when you're cutting really dark hair and the hair chips fall down on the scalp, and so I took my comb and I was just trying to brush away those hair chips on the scalp. And so I noticed that wouldn't let go. I mean, I kept brushing it and it wouldn't move. So I took the hair strand and I kind of lifted it up, and these legs just grabbed onto the hair shift, and I realized that there was lice that was on the head, or this bug of whatever kind. And I just realized that I had my hands in her hair the whole time, and so now I had to blow dry the hair. And and it was interesting that I was I think I said something off mic to the person beside me, and then they were commenting out in the audience, trying to, because they saw I was sweating and I'm blow drying the hair, trying to get this hair dry and get this broomstick going, but not put my hands back in the hair. And now the hair chips that were on her shoulders were flying out onto this, my compadre that was in there. And he was sort of talking to me and doing this. It was that was one of the most fearful moments I think that I had. As well.
That's the worst, isn't it? Because you're in it and people are looking at you, and you just got to kind of just roll with it.
Yeah, I'm
actually thinking about it. Oh my god!
Yeah, the best way to blow dry this broomstick is to do X, Y, Z, and that's what I was doing. So I didn't have to do it again. Oh, good Lord! Oh,
and that's so crazy. Things happen like that. I remember my first ever trip teaching a class. Again, I was maybe 21 at the time, and somebody got sick, so they called me to go to Barcelona to do a 2-day like hands-on seminar at the Weller studio in Spain. And I remember the first section on the first model, and I was just about to layer it, and a lady behind me leant in to see what I was doing and pushed me, and I cut, and I just saw my knuckle just popped off. And it seemed to just like spin in the air and just dropped on the floor. And this is the first snip. And everyone just looked at me, just froze. And it just started pouring with blood. And there was these things happen. And I just had to like bandage it up and just keep on going. But
we didn't know about crazy glue then. Wow. Yeah, those are, we've all had those moments and that's when you're on stage, Lord Almighty. I remember, I think I was in Switzerland doing a gig, and that's when everybody was taking their scissors and twirling their scissors. And I figured, well, I'm going to do that too. So I twirled the scissors, but I twirled them the wrong way, so that when the scissors came back down around, instead of it closing, it slashed me across the side of the finger. And I was working on some avant-garde hair, doing this hair, and so I just went to the backstage and I was going, bandage, bandage. And they looked at me and were going, and so they couldn't understand what I was saying or didn't hear me or whatever. So I'm going back on stage, trying to wipe my hand off, trying to do, oh my God. I have not twirled scissors since then, but.
Yeah, that's the worst. Oh my goodness. And like you said, the lost in translation is the hardest thing, because you're trying to keep on going. And even just when you work behind the chair, right, and you cut your finger, you kind of like, I don't think my client knows. They always know, by the way. They always know.
Oh, yeah. There's no way of hiding that. So listen, I've got a couple more here, but I want to take you back to one that I was thinking was really, for any of the people that are out there that are Sassoon freaks, etc. Because I remember, just watching all the greats cut hair, yourself included. But what was it like when working with that group, when being around people like Mark Hayes and people like, Tim and those kind of people? Were you around when Tim was? I mean, no, you were there when Mark was there. I can't remember if Tim had left by that time or not.
So sorry, continue.
No. I'm just saying, what was it like? Because obviously you had your skills, you got it from those, but you have these greats that are around you. Mm-hmm. What was that like? What was it like for?
It was incredible. Tim left probably about a year after I started, and then Mark took over, and then that's when Bruce, who was my creative director who taught me, so Mark ended up taking over from Tim, and then Bruce stepped up to be the UK creative director. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And again, just watching these guys, they're so disciplined, serious, like passionate. Like it's an obsession for them, an absolute obsession to be better, to grow. It was really inspiring, terrifying as well, absolutely terrifying. And I was really lucky to spend a lot of time with Mark, especially when he'd come over to the US. And I just think probably the most beautiful haircutter I've ever seen. And obviously everyone's amazing, but for me, Mark, the way he works and handles with hair, and he's got the like ridiculously long fingers, and it's just so elegant and incredible. So he was probably the biggest inspiration for me. Bruce, and then definitely Mark, just incredible. And the thing that I loved so much about Mark, he never turned off. So even if you're out having a drink after a presentation or whatever, he's talking about it. What are you into? What music are you into? And he's always into something and into something new. Incredible. Yeah.
Wow. It's just, I love the word that you said, terrifying, because that's how I think we feel when you're around these greats, where their eye and they've got such an incredible set of hands, etc. And I want to go back, and for anybody who's watching and listening right now, I just, if you don't know, if you need to Google, get on the Googe and look up like Mark Hayes and Annie Humphreys and Tim Hartley, and look at the history there, and even going back to my greats, like from my era was Roger Thompson, and when Christopher Brooker, when you look at their work, I mean, I was just in absolute awe, but I would have been terrified to be in a class with them, because they were just such greats, how they changed our industry.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And I think just the level of commitment, dedication, and passion was just unparalleled. Because again, honestly, a lot of these guys had social lives and families and stuff, but their absolute life was being just so good at what it is that they did, and to push forwards. I've kind of never seen anything like it in that kind of like realm. The dedication is just incredible. It's very intense, and for me especially at Sassoon, I loved being around it, and it helped me to learn a lot and achieve what I've done in my career. But I know that it's very, very intense. So for me, it kind of had like an expiration date type things. Okay, I want to kind of go in a slightly different direction, but it's that kind of obsession is incredible.
Yeah. Lee, what I want to make sure, because I want to leave you with a final question here just in a second, but I want to bring up, Lee, if we can bring up that QR code, so when people want to connect with you, they want to get a hold of you through Instagram, etc. We've got this QR code right now. And listen, if out loud for people that are just going to be listening, it is what give us your handle for Instagram. Verbally, so that it's what?
Sure, it's _ Cole, COLE, and then _ Thompson, THOMPSON. But if you just type in Cole Thompson, it should just pop up. And I appreciate the follow in advance. Yeah.
And for anybody if they're watching this, just take out your phone and concentrate it on that QR code. It'll automatically take you there. Cole, our tagline that we have for the Headcases, as this is what this is about. We always feel that you have to be a bit of a head case in order to get to this point in your career. But we were talking about this at the very beginning. We were talking about the show, and we were talking about what form of success that people have. And they said to me, "What is the form of success? What do most successful people in our industry do?" And I said, "Well, I always put it down to what I call the Goya method." And no, I'm not talking about the beans. For if you're from America, there's Goya beans. I'm not talking about those. Different method, different results. But Goya is to me an acronym that it stands for something different, but it stands for get off your, I'm just going to say assets. And get off your assets. That's not the true definition of it, but in order to do something, you got to get off your assets and do something. So if you were to tell somebody that's watching this and some of the people that are listening, what do you think? What get off their assets? What do they need to do? What should they be doing to get off of, in order to move forward in their career? What is it that you would suggest that they do?
For me, I live by show up. Just show up. Whatever it is that you're doing and you want to do, you have to show up every single day. And believe me, there's been times where I've had to go to work and I've, in my mind or in my heart, I'm like, I'm not feeling good today. I'm sad today, or something's just happened personally. But just you have to show up in order to be successful. And this is any industry. Show up every single day. If you're selling something, maybe people don't buy something today. Show up tomorrow. Maybe they don't. Show up tomorrow. Show up. Show up. If you just keep showing up every single day, turning up, things will happen. There's no alternative to that. And I make excuses. We all do. No excuses. Show up, and great things will happen.
Probably some of the wisest words I've heard in a long time, just because that's just what you need to do. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't show up and be present and be you and be authentic. That was awesome. Cole, I just want to say, I can't wait till, I hope like hell that it's not that we're doing a gig together somewhere, that it's going to be the next time that we get to chat. It has been an honor and a pleasure. Again, people, check out his work, check out his company. I always say there's plenty of room in our industry for everybody. And I just want everybody to be super successful. And I wish that on you, my friend. And I can't wait till you and I can get together, share a bevy, and tell more great war stories.
I would like that very much. And thank you for having me. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everything you do. You're a huge inspiration for us as well. And thank you.
Thank you. So listen, everybody, I always say thank you guys for playing along. Thank you for being here. I can't thank you enough for listening to incredible Cole Thompson and his stories, our stories. In the meantime, thank you all. Good luck. God bless. Cheers, and Headcases out.